Salutations, everybody. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Campea, and this, at least for now, is the Weekly Hero. We just still haven't come up with the new name that we're totally comfortable with. We're going to take our time with this. We're going to come up with the right name. So for now, it's still the Weekly Hero with myself and another guy by the name of Robert Meyer Burnett. Robert, how you doing, dude?
John, good to see you this week. How are you?
I am doing great, and we've got a bunch of things we need to talk about this week, including the fact that we've got a whole bunch of toy stuff to look at, which I am very excited about. You brought some new stuff in. I've got it here on my desk. You can't see it on the camera quite yet, but it's right here. I'm going to show it to you guys in just a minute, which I'm all excited about. But listen, we got a few things to talk about here first. And the first thing we're going to talk about here today, off the top, is this whole thing about what I am calling the Avengers 4 problem. Now, of course, the spoiler warning for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, but in Avengers, a whole bunch of characters die.
No.
It's true.
No.
I'm telling you, it's true. I mean, I know you didn't think they were going to kill anybody, but they killed a couple of people. So we've got this little bit of a problem going here now that they killed some people. So the question becomes, how do you market this movie? How do you market Avengers 4? Now, assuming that they're not just going to bring everybody back at the very end, which they might. And if they do, then there's no problem at all for Avengers 4. But let's assume for a minute, just for the sake of the discussion, that these characters do come back either in the first part of the movie or in the second act of the movie, and they become a key part of the ultimately finishing off Thanos or whatever it is they're going to do with this film. Okay, the problem. How do you market this movie? Do you show Doctor Strange back? Do you show Black Panther back? And compounding the Avengers 4 problem is this little film called Spider-Man Far From Home that features not one, not two, but minimum 3 characters who got dusted in Avengers 3. Spider-Man, Maria Hill, and of course, Director Fury. They're all there. That movie comes out just 2 months after Avengers 4, which means minimum they need to start putting out Spider-Man Far From Home trailers at least 3 to 4 months before Avengers 4 ever hits theaters. This is the problem that a lot of people have been talking about. We've been talking about on my show. So, Robert, let me throw this over to you for a second. Okay. Now, there's kind of 2 components to this answer, I guess.
Yes.
Component number 1 is, what should they do? And then the more practical component is, what will they actually do? So let's start with the what should they do thing. Understanding that not just that one movie, you also got Spider-Man Far From Home coming. If Bob Iger calls you and says, we discovered some really bad tweets that Kevin Feige put out 25 years ago, and we need to remove him, and you're our new guy, how do you handle this Avengers 4 problem? What do you do?
Well, Bob Iger's a hero of mine. I'd say, Bob, you know, you're coming off the second highest grossing film in Disney history, the first being, of course, The Force Awakens. I'd say, Bob, you really don't have to worry about anything. People are going to show up for Avengers 4, and I think we should continue the showmanship that we showed in the first film. We had some great trailers, but I don't think that we need to show much at all. As a matter of fact, I would go back and create a trailer that shows no footage from the movie. It's an announcement trailer. It tells you it's coming, and you know, we all know basically this apocalyptic ending of Infinity War occurred, but I don't think audiences want to know anything. I don't think they want to know anything. I think they know it's coming, and what we want to do is show them it's coming, like the inevitability of a freight train rumbling down a tunnel that you're stuck in when your car is conked out and there's no way you can leave. You're going to get hit by that train. So I think they need to come up with something innovative, something interesting, something fun. The same way that Fox marketed Deadpool by using not necessarily trailers, although they had those. They had all kinds of weird cross-promotional marketing, and they did some really interesting out-of-the-box things. That's what I think they should do with Avengers 4. Everyone knows, and have fun with it. It's got to be something that just puts a smile on your face, because I don't think anyone wants to know. Infinity War was a movie, I think in the last 20 years, I was able to go in cold because the premiere was only the night before. I didn't read any reviews. I went in the next morning and saw it, and I was literally blown away. I was so elevated and elated and transported by that film. It was It was better than I thought it was going to be. It was everything I wanted it to be and more. And I don't want to know. I want to go into Avengers 4, and I think everybody doesn't want to know. They know a new movie's coming. They know Spider-Man Homecoming is coming, or Spider-Man Far From Home is coming. But they could make a really fun ad campaign based on not showing us anything. But they can tell us the movie's coming.
See, I still think you're out of your mind for saying, because, last week you brought up something really key. You mentioned your mom. And,
right.
And I mentioned my mom. And it's like, there are those of us, I often have these discussions with people online. They say things like, the new Star Wars movie doesn't need to put out a trailer, or the new Avengers movie doesn't need to put out a trailer. And I think one of the problems is quite often as fans, we think everybody thinks the way we think, right? And because, that's the circles we travel in. If our circles all think one certain way, then we think everybody thinks that certain way. And like when you say nobody wants to see, I'm thinking my mom wants to see. My mom, my aunts, my cousins, those of us, or those people who aren't like us, the people who make up 70% of the box office, these people still need to be sold movie by movie by movie about what's coming, right? Now, something you did say there, though, did catch my attention, and that's the idea of maybe for something like Avengers 4, take a non-traditional marketing approach like a Deadpool. Obviously you can't do a Deadpool-style marketing campaign with Avengers 4, but something in that vein. I don't know what that would look like.
Well, you can only show the characters that didn't get dusted.
Yeah.
You can. Spider-Man got dusted. So if you did something like if there's got to be something really creative, because I'll tell you, bringing up to follow up what you just said about moms, a old friend of mine, this girl I know who's a mother of two teenage girls, a college-age girl and a teenage girl, she had not seen Infinity War until last week, and she wrote me, "What kind of bullshit was this?" And I'm like, I just saw Infinity War. This is a bunch of bullshit. And I'm like, what does that mean? And I said, well, what did you think? She goes, well, I loved it, but it was bullshit. I was so angry. And she's a middle-aged mother, still hot, but a middle-aged mother of two lovely ladies, and she can't wait to see the next installment. But she didn't catch up to it until it was released on video, last week or 2 weeks ago, and she is beside herself with excitement. And I think all the people that are going to catch up with Infinity War now that it's out on home video, I don't think they want to know either. I think they want to walk into that theater. I think everybody watches it. I think she's going to be one of the first people in line. This is a mom of two teenage girls that isn't particularly fond of the MCU. She watched Infinity War and was transported, and she is raring to go. All you have to do is tell her what day it opens and what time the first show is, and she's going to be there.
Again, I just don't think you can make that assumption for the majority. But let me bring this up too. Here's something that actually one of the viewers sent into me, and it did make me think about this. And it's all in the thing of, Kevin Feige's a smart dude. I think he looks at the industry. I think he looks at history, and I think he looks at his competition to learn lessons. Right? Let's look not so long ago at the marketing campaign and the opening weekend massive disappointment of Justice League. They had an incredibly popular character in that movie, probably, maybe, arguably, one of the most, if not the most important popular superheroes of all time, Superman, in that movie, more than half the movie he's in, by the time they finally resurrect him. And for some inexplicable reason, Warner Brothers decided one of the most, if not the most popular comic book character of all time in this movie, let's not market him. Let's just not put him in there. Let's keep the surprise. And I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? Henry Cavill has been posting on Instagram. Here's me on set of the new, everybody knows he's going to be there. Market him. Is there a point to be made here? And I don't ask this as a rhetorical question. Is there a lesson to be learned here that, look, you have Spider-Man. Again, this is all going on the assumption that these characters don't just get brought back at the end of the movie, in which case, no, you shouldn't show them. But if they're coming back in the first or second act, you got Spider-Man, arguably one of the most popular superhero characters in the world. You got Doctor Strange, who's been on a roll. You got Black Panther was dusted, who is the #1 domestic box office superhero movie of all time. Do you go into Avengers 4? Like, I'm thinking, if I'm Kevin Feige, looking at what happened to Warner Brothers with their reviews, because guess what? 2 days after Justice League opened, they redid all their posters, and now everything had Superman. It's like, maybe we should have put Superman in these. But isn't there something to be said there? Like, if you're Kevin Feige looking at that, do you think maybe he takes a step back and goes, can we make this movie with these incredibly popular characters and not have them in the marketing? Like, how would you approach that?
Well, here's the thing. I think Justice League it's different in the sense
that's
that
true.
I still think I think Infinity War has a much broader based audience, and I think the very end of Infinity War is what everyone is. The next generation, all good things,
right?
Which there was 3 different
the greatest series finale of any TV show ever.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And, you know, Picard was unstuck in 3 different time periods, and you see him actually travel back to the pilot episode of Next Generation. And I'm like, okay. And there's that theory online about the time stone and how Doctor Strange, the time stone that he had was from the future. And this guy, there's all kinds of interesting things going on. I think that if you did a marketing campaign where you showed the Avengers from, like, say, the first Avengers, which we know they go back to the first Avengers time period because
we don't know that. I mean,
they showed Chris Evans on set,
right?
You
but
know,
we got to be. Here's my. What
I guess we don't know anything.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like that, but we have often been wrong on assumptions from
it's true.
Unofficial leaked set photos. But I mean, it does look like that.
I just think that they could. I don't want to make it cheeky. I don't want to make it funny because I take this stuff very seriously. And look, I'm one of those people that said people are like, no, Infinity War ended on a cliffhanger. No, it didn't. It was definitive. It ended. Now, what that doesn't mean...
Thank you.
It ended.
Thank you.
Infinity War is a movie that has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Now, we know that they've made Avengers 4, but that doesn't mean it's going to pick up right where Avengers Infinity War left off. It could take place, it could say 2 years later. You know, and that's a whole new movie, and somebody has to figure out, like, do the Avengers know what happened? But how do they stop it? Half the world is gone, like we talked about. It's not just the superheroes. It's half the planet Earth.
Right.
How has the planet changed? I mean, maybe they just decided to help pick up the pieces so there's no riots on the planet and they had to put back the Earth. What do you think a population would do when half of it's suddenly torn asunder? I watched all 3 seasons of The Leftovers, even though I hate watched it, and that was about 2% of the people disappearing. What do you do when 50% of the people disappear? I mean, I would think the Avengers would have their hands full. Governments would collapse. People would panic. So I think you could do something really interesting and not tell anybody what we're going to see. You could make trailers. You've got the characters that aren't dusted, but, like, what would the world be like? Like, that would be a really interesting marketing campaign. What is the Earth like now? When 50% of the people are gone, and you could do a whole series of trailers that shows where the population is, where the governments of the world are at, how the planet has changed leading up to Avengers. And that could be interesting. And you never necessarily address Thanos, because how are the Avengers going to explain, how do they explain where 50% of the population went?
Right.
How do you do that? Like, newscasters, CNN's going to be like, "Where? I don't know where these people went." Anderson Cooper's like, "I don't know what the fuck happened."
If Anderson Cooper's still around.
Yeah, if he didn't get dusted. You know, Rachel Maddow, you know, maybe she's MSNBC, but whoever's left. I mean, it could be really interesting how you market this movie.
But let me bring it back to the one question I brought up, though. Is like, even in the midst of all that, I mean, what I have suggested is that Marvel really has no choice here because, again, there's the Spider-Man Far From Home issue, right? That movie is coming. Everybody knows that movie's coming. Months before Avengers 4 comes out, you're having this probably, I think it's probably fair to say, fact checker Jonathan's here, or Robert, me, like, I think it's fair to say, guys, that the Spider-Man dusting was clearly the highlight dusting. I mean, with the, I don't want to go, like, I mean, beautifully played by everybody
I think
involved.
that's why my mom friend that said that was bullshit because Spider-Man died.
Right?
You know, mother's like, that's a kid. You dusted a kid.
And now, well, guess what? There's going to be a lot of kids dusted.
Infants,
as you were pointing out the whole world. So here you are, you've
all
got
the
a
Snow
situation.
Song Infant Sorrow from, you know, there's going to be a lot of infant sorrow left on the earth.
There is. But you are now in a situation where 3, 4, or 5 months before Avengers 4 hits theaters, you have to have Spider-Man Far From Home trailers coming out, in which you're announcing to the world, Oh, that character who died? He's back. What do you mean he's back? He's back! So, I mean, you're essentially announcing to the world anyway that at least one of the dusted characters is coming back. You're going to see him in action. They're going to show Nick Fury in the trailers and Maria Hill in the trailers. So, how does that affect what you do with Avengers 4 at that point?
But what if your trailer for Far From Home is Steve Rogers going to visit Aunt May? You know, and it's just a scene where you play the whole like Saving Private Ryan scene where you know an army captain or a chaplain goes to the door of a mother to tell her son's passed away. What if that's the trailer? And you just have Aunt May is crying, and then she looks out the window and looks up at the stars, and she's like, he's not gone. Boom! Spider-Man 2, Far From Home, where you do something like that, where you don't show anything, but you can still have your characters that we know and that we've seen, you know, or you could have one of Peter Parker's friends, you know, go and visit the Avengers and say, where is he?
Come on.
Just do something like that. It could be cool.
Come see Spider-Man Homecoming, a 2.5-hour movie that's basically awake and everybody's sad. like a Spider-Man trailer without showing Spider-Man?
No, it's like at the end of Star Trek 2 when Kirk says, there are always possibilities. I must come this way again someday. You know, right. He's thinking about Spock, and it's you could have these characters, they're all looking up to the stars. Like, there's the answer. You know, the answer's on Titan where Tony Stark still is stuck there. You know, I don't know what's going to happen. You got Nebula out there. You know, who knows? You could still do something. It's got to be cool. It could be as cool. If this marketing campaign is great, it could be one of the great ad campaigns ever for a movie if they're doing it. And I'll tell you something. They've figured it out already. They already know.
I agree they already know. And it's trailers with a hell of a lot of Spider-Man in it. That's what I think.
No.
I think you are nuts.
They're gonna play. They can have Spider-Man in the 2 months up to after Infinity War, but I think they're gonna have a lot of fun with the audience up to the release of Avengers 4.
Okay, well, listen, I want to know what you guys think. How do you think they're going to handle this? Jump into do you think they will have the first few months of Spider-Man Far From Home marketing without showing any Spider-Man until after Avengers 4? Or do you think more like a rational human being or do you think more like me that no, they're going to go full blown on that and they're just going to show it? But it's an interesting. It's a topic that has caused a lot of debate and discussion, and I mean, fact checker Jonathan. We can't see you in camera right now, but you guys got to believe me. Fact checker Jonathan's sitting right there. Are we going to see Spider-Man in the Spider-Man Far From Home trailers before Avengers 4 opens? 2 months separating Avengers 4 and when the movie opens. He's humming and hawing.
I'm going to go no.
You're siding with Robert. He said no, for those of you who couldn't hear him. He said
I think
no.
It's going to be on the heels.
Yeah, it's going to be. You're going to see
certainly.
it.
Yeah, I think we all agree with that. Like, if they don't show him in the trailers prior to Avengers 4, then you're going to see him in Avengers 4. Therefore, there's no point in not showing it. But I don't know, man. They were showing Black Panther and all. They were showing Black Panther in the Avengers Infinity War trailers long before Black Panther ever came out. I just think they're going to.
But he hadn't been dusted.
That's true. Yeah.
They're going to have. They have the.
And it wasn't Civil War.
They've got the greatest marketing gimmick. The fact that we're talking about how they're going to market this movie already proves to me that they've got the most. They have got us on the hook, and their marketing campaign is going to be so talked about. Whatever they've figured out, it's going to be something interesting, new, and innovative, and we're going to be blown away by it. And we're all going to have big smiles on our faces whenever they do what they're going to do, because it's going to be great.
Well, we will find out soon enough, because we are getting closer. We're within a year. We're getting closer, and it's coming. All right. Hey, we got a couple of other topics we want to talk about here, but as is now a weekly tradition here on currently known as the Weekly Heroes Show, if Robert Meyer Burnett's in the house, you got to talk a little bit of Hot Toys. And Robert, you have brought us not one, but two figures to look at today.
Okay, this time it's not a superhero figure. It's not from a superhero movie, but it's from one of the oldest franchises that you buy toys from, and it's something I've always wanted. They've only made. Well, let's just show you. Today's figure is the 2-pack that I think they made because of Rogue One of Darth Vader and Peter Cushing as Grand Moff Tarkin. Now, I Grand Moff Tarkin has always been given the short shrift, not lately, but they never made a Tarkin figure for the original Star Wars, the 3 3/4 inch figures. They never made an original Tarkin for the Kenner figures, and they only made one 6-scale Tarkin that was actually pretty good back in the early aughts, I think. So after Rogue One, I hope Hot Toys makes a Tarkin. And they do sell these figures separately, but there's more accessories if you buy them together.
Have you read there is a Tarkin novel? They put out a Tarkin novel. I thought it was terrific.
I loved
it.
Great. And then they followed it up. The same author wrote was it a Catalyst?
Right.
The book about building Death Star. Now, one of the great things I should say about I have this weird action figure fetish. I like action figures that come with chairs.
Oh, yeah.
I've got a Tony Montana from Scarface that comes with that Blitzway made that comes with the chair. Hot Toys made an awesome Vito Corleone figure, which is my favorite Hot Toy figure of all time. He comes with the chair. Sideshow made a Grand Admiral Thrawn about 10 years ago that came with the chair. Hot Toys is putting out the Deluxe Emperor chair, the Deluxe Emperor figure. And he comes with Palpatine comes with his throne, and I just give me action figures that come with chairs.
All
now,
right, so
let's
not. Everybody's starting to scream at me here. Let's take a look at these things here as you discuss them here. But here we go.
Well,
first of all, let's start with Vader.
Now, there's been a lot of Vaders. Sideshow's made good Vaders. Kenner even made good Vaders. There's been a million different Vader toys. This Vader is pretty great. He also has batteries. He illuminates. His lightsaber illuminates. The costume on that. Now, this is the New Hope Vader. So he doesn't have as much writing on the chest plate. There's less detail. His helmet is a little different. It's not as polished as, say, the helmet in Jedi was. It's a great. I mean, again, this is one of the best Vader figures that's ever been done. This particular version of Vader.
Let's go over and take a look at
Tarkin in his chair. I was so stoked that he came with his chair, and I mean, to set these guys up. You put Princess Leia in there. You prefer another target, a military target, than name the system.
You can't see it right now, Robert, but I got a close-up of his face. I cannot believe I'm not actually looking at an image of Peter Cushing.
It's unbelievable.
Even the pores and everything. The eyes are unbelievable. Folks, look at this.
Yeah, I mean, this figure... And if you buy these figures separately, it's like they cost more than they do in this box together. And they have different accessories. It's the same thing. The same was true when Han and Chewie from A New Hope were first released by Hot Toys. They came in a 2-pack, and they each came with their communication devices that they wear on their heads when they're both piloting the Falcon, because they're going to make. They keep teasing it, but they're going to make a cockpit, a Millennium Falcon 6-scale cockpit for those figures. And if you got the 2-pack, you'll have the headgear that they need to talk to people.
Well,
so these are fantastic figures, and I love them so much.
Well, they are spectacular figures. This Tarkin is so damn good. Hey, just while I'm here, though, it's not just the big expensive stuff. I also like pops. You can see me. I just wanted to show you one of my pops here today. And the pop I wanted to show you guys today was since we're talking so much about Avengers 4 and everything, is my Thanos Pop.
That's an awesome pop.
Just to give you a sense of the scale, here's a regular-sized pop. One of my Weird Al Yankovic pops that Ann gets me, because I love Weird Al Yankovic. So this is it. Actually, let me get I'll switch.
Do you think Weird Al got dusted?
Oh, God, I can't even... That's horror talking to me right now. That's horror. I love the look on his face in this thing. I'm just a big fan of pops. I got a whole ton of them, as you can already see. This is the Guardians of the Galaxy pop of Thanos, not the Infinity War Thanos. So he's got, like, the little bit of the brighter outfit and everything like that. But I think he looks great. I love this toy so much, and I love having him on my shelf. But, again, the star of today's show, ladies and gentlemen, is this Tarkin and Vader set, which is just unbelievable. I love this segment of the show. I love when you bring these toys in, man. These are just awesome. It just gives me an excuse to look at them and gawk at them a little bit.
Yeah, it's sort of silly, because I mean, like, how long? I'm closer to death than I've ever been. And I keep collecting these figures, and when I die, what are they going to do? What is my next of kin going to do with these things? Like,
I'll tell you what
I'm keeping the boxes, though.
I mean, I'm assuming you're willing them to me. I'm assuming like that. I mean, if we're going to go, I wasn't going to bring it up, but if you want to bring it up, you could always leave them.
In case of death, please give these to John Campea.
There we go. All right, listen, we got a few more things to talk about, and then we're going to spend a bunch of time going to your live questions. You guys have already been sending in live questions. But there is one thing I wanted to bring up here today.
Veronica Mars? Can't wait.
But, well, actually, you want to talk about Veronica Mars for a second?
Well, I love Veronica Mars. You know, it only ran 3 seasons, and then they crowdfunded the movie, which was a little disappointing. But on the third season disc, they had a pilot presentation for what a Veronica Mars FBI show would be. And it was really good. So maybe that's what this show is. I'm very excited. It was a beautifully written show. Love it. I can't wait.
They're saying like it's going to be a Hulu thing.
It's going to be a Hulu thing, probably a limited series, 8 to 10 episodes.
And they're getting closer than ever before. But here's the thing. So the other day, and I just really want to know what your thoughts on this, Robert, was. The other day, Chris Hemsworth was being interviewed and talking about the older Thor movies. You know, he loved the first one, but when asked about Thor: The Dark World, he said, one-word answer, meh. He said the first one was great, the second one was meh. Which I think is probably a fairly accurate representation of how a lot of people look at the movie. Like, I didn't think it was a terrible movie. I thought it was okay, but it was distinctly a step down from what I thought was the Kenneth Branagh masterpiece. Like, to me, the first Thor is one of the top 10 comic book movies of all time. But now, juxtaposed against that, I talked about this one article, I believe it was in Cinema Blend, where the writer, talking about Chris Hemsworth's response to the mass statement, he said, nonetheless, though, Thor: The Dark World will, as we look back, years from now, as we look back at the comic book movies in the MCU, particularly in these first few stages, that Thor 2 is one of the more important films. He said for a couple of reasons. Reason number one, it was the introduction of the Reality Stone. Mm-hmm. And really gave us more of a fleshed out notion of what these stones do than the films that came before that. The second thing he said was that no film gave us a better understanding and more character development in the key character of Loki than Thor: The Dark World. That's really, we saw most of his progression and the character he became for the rest of the MCU. Mm-hmm. I particularly was a big fan of when he was, that scene when he's in his prison cell and he hears that somebody killed his mother. Like, that scene was amazing, and it was really great. So I'm just curious about you, Robert. First of all, what do you think of Thor: The Dark World, and how do you think 10 years from now, will we look back on it as meh? Will we look back on it as important? Will we look at it as somewhere in between that? What do you think?
Well, I think you made a good point there. History, I think all of the MCU is going to be reassessed looking back, and how does it fit into the larger whole? And I know that, Tom Hiddleston has talked a lot about the reshoots they did for Thor 2 and that they were pretty extensive. I know that Alan Taylor might not have pulled out the kind of film that they expected of him because he had done Game of Thrones episodes, and I don't know if he was perhaps the right director, especially following on the heels of Kenneth Branagh, because you really had to understand what Shakespearean meant, which was why I thought it was such a genius choice to pick Branagh to do Thor, the first Thor.
Oh, completely.
But I do think,
yeah.
like looking back in time, how do all these movies fit together? And I think you really hit the nail on the head when you talked about how much Thor: The Dark World means to the greater MCU, and specifically the Infinity Stones and Loki's character. And I think the problem is everybody wants every one of these movies to change their life. They expect every single movie to be like the greatest movie I've ever seen, because Infinity War could quite possibly be that. Certainly the Return of the King of the MCU. But don't forget, you can still go back and like an Ant-Man or Ant-Man and the Wasp, and it doesn't have to be apocalyptic, and it can still be enjoyable. I thought Thor: The Dark World wasn't entirely successful, but I really liked the fantasy elements of it. I think Christopher Eccleston got, as Malekith, got kind of he was short shrift.
Absolutely.
And I think that there's probably a better movie in there if they let it be a little bit longer. But, and there is no Hot Toys figure of the villain.
Well, that's the big important thing, right? There's no Hot Toys.
You can always judge. By the way, they just came out with the Gladiator Hulk from Ragnarok. I do not have that yet, but you bet your bottom dollar I'll be bringing him on this show. But I think the whole MCU is going to start being judged as a collective whole eventually. People talk about which parts were better, but it's unprecedented in Hollywood history that we have this whole grouping of movies together. No one's ever done that before. Certainly not to this extent. And I think they're going to be viewed as a holistic thing, that you're going to need to watch all of them, even though some are better than others.
All right. Well, listen, guys, I had a few other topics lined up, but what you guys want to talk about is more important than that. So we're going to go over to the live questions. A whole bunch of you guys have already sent them in. We are going to go, I mean, there's already a lot of questions, guys, so we'll probably go through them fairly quickly, but we're going to try to get to all of them if we can. All right. We're going to get things started here with the first one from Snake Jerusalem, who writes, how about a comic book list curated by Robert Meyer Burnett, tongue twister, Robert Meyer Burnett each episode. Well, let me answer that for a second. One of the things about Weekly Hero and whatever it is this show ends up actually being titled is that this is not per se a comic book show. It's a comic book movie and television show. It's about comic books that get translated into movies and TV. And I think there are many, many, many fabulous outlets out there that cover just comic books, but it's a little bit outside of the scope of what we're doing here. However, if Robert Meyer Burnett ever thought, hey, there's this particular series I'm really excited about and I want to talk about, I mean, if you'd be open for that, I'd be open for that.
Yeah, or we could, even on your website or wherever, you host the show, maybe we could do a separate segment, an evergreen segment, to go, here's what our favorite comic books are, here's our favorite anime is, our favorite toys. Like, one of my favorite anime series of all time, Legends of the Galactic Heroes, is being finally released domestically on Blu-ray this week, but it's $800. It's Sentai Filmworks. Is it Sentai Filmworks is putting it out? I mean, it's my favorite animated series of all time, and it's incredible. It's a space opera, but it's like 26 Blu-rays in one box. I can't tell people to go out and buy that in good conscience. I'm like, look, it is my find the fan subs, find it on Crunchyroll. I don't know, but damn, I want to get that box set.
All right, next one comes to us from Bruce Wayne, who writes, with all the procedurals like Bones, Lucifer, Castle, Law and Order, and more, could you see a Lois and Clark revival working on TV today? With everything CW's doing right now,
Yeah.
and I'm going to guess no, but what do you think?
I agree with you. I mean, they're bringing back Superman in this crossover event, the CW crossover
which we didn't even talk about.
Yeah, and I think it's really cool that they are. I mean, I can't wait to see this crossover event. They're killing it with this. The first one, the Invasion crossover, I couldn't believe we saw the Dominators on TV, and then the Crisis on Earth X. They're getting better. I have high hopes for this. But yeah, I don't think Lois and Clark, the problem is, Terry Hatcher's, 55, 60? And they could do that, and I don't mean to be an ageist, because I'm certainly approaching that age myself, but I just can't see that really working unless they recast. But again, the CW is kind of killing it with the Berlanti shows. I don't see them bringing Lois Clark back. Although I like the sentiment, I like the idea. If they did, I'd probably watch it.
All right, next question, is a huge topic, but, Jake C. asks, how do you think Disney will reintroduce the X-Men? Look, I still don't even think it's a 100%. I know what we've heard Bob Iger say and stuff like that. I don't even think Kevin Feige, to be honest with you, has even begun thinking about it. I really don't. I don't think he's putting one thought into it yet. It is a problem because you either got to change the beloved history of the X-Men, where you've had mutants around for decades, going back to Charles Xavier and a young Eric Leshner and all that kind of stuff, because there's never been any mention of mutants in the current MCU. So you either have to erase that and say mutants are a new phenomena, or you have to retcon a lot of MCU history, or you do some people are saying, which I think is a little bit too inside baseball, like you do a reality warp thing and whatever. But the honest answer is I just don't know. Do you got a theory on that?
I don't, but I do think they've talked about it. I think Kevin Feige, knowing that this Fox merger was going to happen, they've certainly got plans within plans within plans. I don't know. Again, the X-Men franchise is interesting in that some of the films are way more successful than others. I think a lot of people, I love McAvoy as Professor X. I love Patrick Stewart as Professor X. I thought Logan, was one of the great X-Men films, if not one of the great superhero films of all time, and that came right out of Bryan Singer's X-Men 1 and X-Men 2. He cast both of those actors, and unfortunately, the films themselves have been so hit and miss and up and down that I like a lot of the actors, and it'd be difficult to go back and reboot the X-Men from scratch. But I think if they did, they would go back to the whole idea of putting these characters together for the very first time, making that do their version of First Class, essentially. But
Right.
they would do it in the MCU. I think that's the only way to do it, to reboot these characters from scratch, reintroduce everybody, and move forward. And, maybe even do it, through time, throughout history. I mean, think about it. They're going to have to recast somebody to play Wolverine.
Yeah.
Who do you do that? And do you go for the Canuck, Is that how you pronounce it? Is Canuck?
Yeah, the Canuck.
The
Yeah.
Canuck. He's got to be 5 foot tall.
The old Knucklehead.
The old
They call him in
Knucklehead, yes, the old
comics, yeah.
Knucklehead. I mean, Wolverine's 5 feet tall. He's not 6 feet tall. Like, do they go back and do that? Would people even buy? Would you get Peter Dinklage to play Wolverine? Would people buy that? I don't know. Of course, he's already been in the X-Men too. So.
Yeah. I secretly, and I know it's not so secretly, what I really hope, and I know they're not going to do it, and I know everybody hates me for saying it. In my ideal world, they create a second film universe and keep the X-Men separate from all. The MCU is so crowded right now with so many movies they still haven't even begun to make. And now you're going to try to... So what, we're going to get one X-Men film every 3 years, every 5 years? I mean, I don't know. I secretly hope they keep it so. I know they're not going to, but that's kind of what I secretly hope they did.
But Guardians of the Galaxy did a good job of introducing a whole new sort of pantheon, a whole group of characters that became a team. We hadn't met them before, unless you've read the comics, and they did a really good job of that.
Yes, they did.
And I'm a big fan of the second film. A lot of people aren't, but I don't know why. I think the second film has a really interesting look at families and dysfunctional families, and it might not be... I think fans sometimes aren't open to looking at different kinds of stories with their beloved characters. They kind of want the same homogenized story again. And I think movies like Last Jedi and Guardians 2 were both sort of different than what people might have wanted. So no one looks at them for what they actually are.
Right.
They just look at what they're not. And I think that's kind of unfair.
All right, let's move on here. Brian Cruz writes, 2 questions. Robert, again, people asking questions that would really be better as 1 hour topics, but
Right.
Robert, I once heard you say that you were not a big fan of the new Star Trek movies. Can you elaborate? Also, First Contact is still my favorite Star Trek movie. Where would you guys rank it? But before you get to the thing on that, I'll just say I like First Contact. It's not in my top 2 or 3. I think my all-time favorite Star Trek movie is probably Voyage Home. I love Voyage Home. Wrath of Khan obviously is right up there. But where would you put First Contact? And in a short phrase, like what's from the new movies?
I think First Contact is by far the best of the Next Generation films.
Yeah, I agree with that.
It's a lot of fun. Unfortunately, all of the ground, everything that happens in First Contact, aside from the time travel element, was covered, and I think covered better in the series itself. I mean, you look, first of all, you've got Q-Who from the second season where the Borg introduced. You've got Best of Both Worlds. You've got I-Borg when they introduced Hugh, taken away from the collective. And then, of course, Descent 1 and 2, which was from the end of the 6th and the beginning of the 7th season, which was, okay. But I really think the Borg were dealt with. And it seemed to me that First Contact was sort of pandering. It was just... You create a Borg queen that sort of goes against the fact that it's a hive.
I thought the exact same thing.
The whole thing about the Borg was that they were so scary because there wasn't anybody you could talk to. The way they worked was they were this collective. They didn't care about you. They didn't care about individuals. You beamed onto their ship, they'd just walk right by you. But once you have Alice Krieger, she was awesome looking. Every S&M fantasy I might have ever had made flesh in a sci-fi Star Trek movie. All right. And she was hot because she was in Ghost Story. But, again, it made no sense, but it's fun. It's really cool. I really like that movie. The other question is, I think that what I did not like about Star Trek 09 is it was a dumbed down version of Star Trek. It was essentially Top Gun in space. Captain Kirk was Maverick, and he was never Maverick in real life. I mean, he has a problem. Captain Kirk rolls up on
in real life.
Well, yes, in real life. Pardon me. In my head canon, no. But I think the problem with Star Trek 09 was I understand it was made for the masses, but Star Trek was always about people doing intelligent things. There were no villains in Star Trek. There were antagonists. And if you look at the original Star Trek, there were no really bad people. There were just people that had a different philosophy or believed different things than our main characters did. And Star Trek 09 gave us a really dumb villain who's mad because his home planet blew up, but he's got a time machine, or he can travel through time, and he does travel in time. He doesn't go right to his home world and go, hey, in 80 years, this planet's going to blow up. Let's help everybody. He doesn't do that. He just stays mad. I mean, didn't he see the Romulan version of Back to the Future? Didn't he get what time travel is? It's like, dude, you're back 80 years in time. You're mad because your home world blew up. Why don't you make a beeline to your home world, forget about the Federation, and save your planet? But he doesn't. That's why I didn't like Star Trek 09. It's monumentally stupid. But I did like the cast, and I thought the characters, they were a lot of fun to watch.
All right, let's move on here. Next one comes to us from Murray Reich, who writes, would you want to see a futuristic Gotham City like Blade Runner in a Batman movie? I wouldn't. I mean, if you really want Batman Beyond, you can go watch a Batman Beyond cartoon, but...
Right.
I mean, Gotham's already kind of gray and almost like a post-apocalyptic on its own, but I'm not interested. Maybe you would be.
Well, no, Tim Burton's Batman had Anton Furst as a production designer.
Yeah.
It kind of was. I think one of the great appeals of the modern superhero film, this is a theory of mine, is that all the time we've waited to see what... We want to believe that superheroes exist outside our window. I think anybody that loves comic books or loves superhero movies or the CW shows want to know what it would be like to live in a world with real superheroes. And the MCU, I think one of its appeals is it's set in the real world. Even the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies took place in sort of movie New York as opposed to real New York, if that makes any sense. And I think the MCU does a really good job of making us believe as audience members that those characters exist in our world today, which is part of the appeal of those movies. You know, that we believe that they're real. And they're not set in some weird fantasy Blade Runner city. They're set in a modern city.
All right, next one. Tom Foster writes, hey, imagination connoisseurs, if money wasn't an issue, what collectible would both of you love to own if Rob has more room in his awesome collection? I'll tell you which one I just came across today is a Sideshow collectible, over 3 foot tall statue of Thanos. I don't know if you saw this.
Oh, yeah.
And where he's just standing. It's like 3 feet
the legendary scale
tall.
Yeah.
It's I think they call it 1/4 scale, but it's huge.
Yeah.
And it's $1,000, $999. But my mouth was watering. That instantly shot to the top of the figure. That if money wasn't an issue, that's the one I would get. What about you, Robert?
Well, about 10 years ago, Christie's, the auction house, had a huge Star Trek auction. Now, I don't collect props. But I do collect models. I love spaceships. And my favorite spaceship ever, is the Enterprise from Star Trek The Motion Picture. The refit, they call it the refit Enterprise from 1979 Star Trek The Motion Picture that stayed in the classic Star Trek movies. They sold that model. And Jeff Bezos, the man who founded Amazon,
yeah.
He bought it for $250,000.
Oh, wow.
And I thought it was going to go for a lot more. He got, as far as I'm concerned, it was a steal. And it is actually in the lobby of his space company, Blue Origin. It's just there. It's not even in a glass case. I mean, even the Smithsonian has the original Enterprise protected under glass. I would have wanted to have bought that. But barring that, I want a $20,000 Robbie the Robot from Forbidden Planet, which you can buy. But I don't know how I could ever justify buying a collectible that's more than a car.
Just a side note, my 2 all-time favorite spaceships. In number 2 position is the space battleship Yamato from Star Blazers. Love that ship. And my number 1 favorite spaceship of all time, surprisingly enough, is not a Star Wars ship. It's the Battlestar Galactica.
Oh.
The Galactica is my favorite spaceship.
Such a great... The old one or the new one? They're both awesome.
They're very similar. They're
yeah.
very, very similar. So,
dude, I have to tell you, I love Space Battleship Yamato. I have a 3 foot model it's all electric. The guns go up and down. The lights work. But have you been watching Yamato, Space Battleship Yamato 2202?
I have not.
They've done a reboot. It started in 2012. They retold the first Star Blazers season, but they did it with new animation and new writing. Now they're in the middle of the 2nd season with the Comet Empire.
Right.
Amazing. You can watch it on Crunchyroll. It's unbelievable. And the ships, the new Starship Andromeda, the Yamato looks almost exactly the same. It's awesome. I can't recommend it highly enough.
But do they have Deathlock in it?
Oh, yes.
Oh, they do have Deathlock.
And he is the new Star Blazers. It's Star Blazers $21.99 or Space Battleship Yamato $21.99. It just came out on Blu-ray 2 weeks ago. and it's incredible. If you've never seen Star Blazers, you don't know what we're talking about, go get Star Blazers, $21.99. It's on Blu-ray. You won't regret it.
Star Blazers. I used to watch that as a kid all the
We're
time.
leaving Mother Earth. We're off to outer space.
Okay, Hands of Stone writes, are you excited for the Watchmen HBO series? I want to be, but honestly, right now I'm not. Hopefully when I see it, it'll change my mind. Robert?
A friend of mine read the pilot.
Really?
And yes, a friend of mine, I'm not going to say who, but a friend of mine who actually works in the entertainment business in a certain capacity read it, and he didn't know what to make of it. Because he says it's not, when you read it, he kind of saw what was happening, but he wants to see it, but he didn't, it bewildered him. That's what he said. But he said it was good. It was just bewildering.
Right,
I don't know what that means,
let's
but
see
he
how that
couldn't
turns
elaborate.
All right, next one. James Peter writes, funny, with all the comic book movies coming out in 2019, Avengers 4, Spider-Man, Wonder Woman 84, I am most excited for Hellboy. I don't blame you, man. I'm very, very stoked for this. We got it. We're probably going to, I'm guessing within the next 5 to 6 weeks, we're going to get our first trailer. We are getting close to January when the film opens. I'm telling you, I love the first image of Hellboy that came out. I think it looks good. You still have Mike Mignola on there working on it. You got the director of one of my all-time favorite horror films, The Descent, working on the thing. I'm very excited. Now, I'm not going to lie. It has not replaced Avengers 4 for my most look forward to comic book movie of 2019. But I don't know. Where does this sit for you?
I'm excited. I liked the first two Hellboy movies. I didn't love them. I mean, I thought there's a lot of great stuff about them, but I think that I really like Neil Marshall's movies. I mean, I enjoyed his Crazy Doomsday, which is an amalgamation of like 8 other movies, everything from Excalibur to The Road Warrior to Escape from New York. I loved The Descent. I love Dog Soldiers. I love Centurion, the Roman movie he made with Michael Fassbender. I'm really looking forward to this. I think he's the great director for it, and I think we're going to see a darker, grittier, scarier Hellboy.
All right, this one comes to us from ZOMG Ruler, who writes, Scarlet Spider takes Spidey's place in the Sonyverse. No, I really don't think it will. Look, it's pretty clear that in this arrangement between the MCU and Sony, Sony can't use a live-action Spider-Man, whether it's a Wilson Morales, or whether it's, Scarlet Spider, or whether it's Ben Reilly, or whether it's, whoever else. I don't think we can see a live-action Spider-Man. As long as this deal is in place, I don't think any version of a Spider-Man, even if you call him Scarlet Spider, I don't think they're going to be able to do that. I don't even think we're going to be able to get like a Silk live action. They're able to do that in animated form, so we're going to get a lot of that. So like we got Spider-Gwen and whatever coming up in Spider-Man Into the Spideyverse, but I don't think we can see that stuff in live action until this deal is done. Yeah. Unless you know anything different about that.
No, I don't. And I look, I agree with you. There's something you just jogged my memory. I wanted to mention this. Whatever happens in Avengers 4, let's say that there's the great undusting.
Right.
Well, what if Tony Stark and Nebula leave Titan and Spider-Man is reconstituted on Titan all by himself? I mean, what if you come back where you were dusted? Like,
I never even thought about that.
Then what's going to happen? It's going to be Mr. Stark? Mr. Stark?
Hello?
What's he going to eat? Is there water on Titan?
I don't know. Really good point. All right. John Early writes, really hope Venom and next year's Joker do well. Well, I mean, first of all, I hope they are good. So we'll start there. And then if they're good, then yes, I do hope they do well. I'll never understand the idea that I don't care if a movie's good. I want it to fail. I've never understood that mentality whatsoever. Like, let's hope they're good. And if they're good, let's hope they succeed. Because that's what we should want good movies to do. I agree with you. If they're good, I want them to succeed. You thought?
I could not. Movies are so hard to make. And this idea that I can't stand when people go, oh, that movie sucked. Well, there's a lot of movies that aren't so great, but there's something in movies, even bad movies, that I enjoy watching. Like, I never not enjoy watching a film. Even if a movie's bad, I see things in it. I learn from things. I learn what not to do. It's this idea that things, oh, that sucked. I mean, and if you say something sucked, the problem isn't with the movie. The problem is the fact that you're not looking at it hard enough, because you should have something more to say than it just sucked. What does that mean? Give me a little bit more. Let me turn your intellectual prowess onto the movie you think sucks and try and get something out of it. Try and find something of value in it. That's what I always do. I'm a glass is always half full kind of guy. And, I might be this much closer to death than I was yesterday, but I'm still here.
All right. Next one comes to us from ZCM Zombie Custom Maps writes, Jim Starlin said that Infinity War cut 30 minutes of Thanos' backstory. Do you think we'll ever see it in an extended cut after Avengers 4 comes out? MCU doesn't seem to be down with extended cuts. They don't seem to be really... So I can't see them doing that. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but...
I think you might be right. Although I do find something... I find this extremely annoying, and I mentioned this on Twitter, and a lot of people have been tweeting it back to me. The IMAX aspect ratio of Infinity War is about 22% taller than the original 235 to 1 or 239 to 1 aspect ratio that we got on home video.
Right.
And they touted this for the IMAX screenings. They're like, see more. And you can see, because Thanos is so tall, that there are scenes in Infinity War in the home video version where his head's sort of getting cut off. And I think it's a much more satisfying experience with that IMAX ratio. And I could see them. I even tweeted the Russo brothers. I'm like, dudes, what's up, man? Give me the IMAX ratio. So maybe they'll do a special edition. You know, they're doing a 10th anniversary IMAX event with the MCU.
A full film festival of them?
Yeah, I mean, why not remaster or put out that special IMAX-only version with the extra Thanos scenes? Do their first extended edition, but do it as a big event thing. Do it as an IMAX thing, maybe even only available at IMAX theaters. I don't know, but I'd love to see that IMAX, because I love Infinity War so much, and I just want to see what it looked like in that wider aspect ratio.
Of course, the problem with that, though, is that a lot of average moviegoers don't like having bars on their screens because they don't understand. I remember having so many discussions with my dad about why they cut off the top. They didn't cut off the sides, Dad. They're showing you they didn't put black bars in. They're showing you the full picture. But that's a lot of the home video audience.
But even if it's just 16:9, you know, it's letterbox even now. But if they just added and filled up the screen and made it the regular, you know, like a normal 185 to 1 or 179.
But if you do that, you're cutting off a little bit.
No, you wouldn't.
You just add
to the top. Oops. You just add to the top and bottom.
And then, of course, there's the expense of actually, the question comes up, why not just make a version of it that's in IMAX? Well, because that's an entirely new set of expenses and costs for making a completely different product. And can you sell enough of that product to justify it? Well, it's a tough situation.
It is. But, you know, Warner Brothers did that with the Nolan movies. They changed the aspect ratio. Same with Dunkirk. So it's not unprecedented, but all of Infinity War was shot with IMAX cameras. So they have a version of it that's already exists.
Yeah, they have it.
And add the Thanos stuff to it, but they probably have a half an hour of unfinished Thanos footage. That's a big expense. But they made some cheddar on that movie, so why not do an extended version?
Next one, ZCM Zombie Custom Maps follows it up with, would you rather see James Gunn do a He-Man movie or a DC film? Look, whatever. Flip a coin. I just want to see whatever James Gunn directs. Those are both great ideas. The question really becomes, what do I want to see more? The next DC film or He-Man film? Mm-hmm. Well, everybody's been trying to figure out a way to crack the He-Man code to make it great. So I'm going to say He-Man, not as any sort of a disparity on the DC stuff, is that we've got lots of DC movies coming. Somebody needs to crack the code on He-Man, so I'm going to go He-Man. What about you?
Can I say something new?
Absolutely.
Danny Boyle is no longer directing Bond 25. James Gunn should direct the new Bond film, because I love Bond films that mix the humor, a little humor, with the action. We know he can do the action adventure, but he also can do the funny character bits. Not that Bond is a comedy, but Daniel Craig, as much as I love him, those movies are so dour. And I would love to see an injection of that old one-liner, that twinkle, like
Connery Bond.
The Connery Bond, a melding of Connery and Roger Moore. I mean, James Bond needs somebody like James Gunn. If you can't get Chris McQuarrie, James Gunn could do something interesting with Bond 25.
All right, Luke1234 writes, would you rather fly or teleport with a thought? The teleport with a thought is cool, but I'm still a fly guy.
Yeah, you know what? It depends how fast you could fly, but I'm with you. Like, when I watched Chronicle, you know, those kids, when they started flying, I'm like, man, I want to do that. Chronicle was so, you know, Josh Trank's first film, and man, those flying scenes were cool, and I just wanted to do that so bad. By
the way, Josh Trank's new film with Tom Hardy as Al Capone is rapidly coming up. So I've been very curious about that.
Yeah.
Comic Game writes, what are the chances of World Breaker Hulk in Avengers 4? I think very low. I think in the commentary, the Russos kind of laid out where the narrative with Hulk is going, and it doesn't include World Breaker. So I think the chances are low. What do you think?
I agree. I mean, that's a comic book thing that's cool, but you have to make that work in the larger MCU. I could definitely see World War Hulk being Avengers 5. where somehow a pissed off Hulk comes back and they have to fight him. But you know what? Once you've seen Thanos beat down the Hulk, there's a little bit of mystique taken away from him.
Yeah,
Hulk is not unbeatable.
Which also leads to the idea. Somebody was writing this into me, like Hulk with this new turmoil he's having, he taps into something. Like what they have not really shown in this incarnation of Hulk is that the theory of the madder Hulk gets, the stronger Hulk gets,
right,
rendering him essentially like unlimited. There is no limit to how powerful Hulk can be. They've never really touched on that in this incarnation, but maybe it's something they tap into going forward if they wanted to do something you were suggesting, like Avengers 5, where Hulk becomes the antagonist.
Yeah, I mean, but I don't know. I mean, I like what they're doing with Hulk.
Oh yeah,
the fact that he couldn't come out, and I really enjoyed that. I love seeing more of Ruffalo, and between Ragnarok and Infinity War, I think Hulk's been they're doing right by the audience with the old Hulkster.
All right, let's see. Lorna Chowdhury writes, "Hey, Robert and John, just wanted to say y'all got a fan from San Antonio. If you ever come over, free food from my deli." Well, you just gave me a reason to come to San Antonio.
Yeah.
Besides checking out a Spurs game, you ever been to San Antonio?
I've never been. I've been to Houston, and I've been to Dallas.
I've been to Dallas, but I've spent the town I've spent most time in Texas has been Austin. I mean, with South by Southwest.
I've never been. I want to go. I've got
You've
friends
never
that live.
been to South by
I've never been to South by Southwest. I'm submitting this movie that I'm working on called Tango Shalom to South by Southwest this year. It's kind of a crazy movie that has a really good, interesting soundtrack. So if anyone has any pull, South by Southwest.
All right, next one up. James L.H. writes, "Guys, it's only rumors and I dislike them as a fan. Hope it becomes true here in the UK. Newspapers report that Benedict pay increase with Doctor Strange 2 filming next year. Have you heard about this? Not too excited yet." First of all, the reason I doubt this is because of the thing you pointed out. Benedict getting a pay increase. That ain't what the MCU does. The MCU signs you to a contract, and they're going to pay you for that contract. And if Robert Downey Jr. couldn't get a pay increase until his initial run of contracts was done, I don't see how Benedict would be able to either. And Benedict can't exactly just turn around and walk. He's got a contract. So, and we know they signed him to a multi-film deal. So, I mean, it's possible. Anything's possible. But have you heard anything about this, Robert?
No, I mean, I did read that article about it. Said that, he made like $5.6 million to do Doctor Strange and Infinity War, and they bumped him up like to $8 million to do Doctor Strange 2. First of all, I don't know who gets that information. The real salaries that people are making usually don't get out unless it's some exorbitantly high salary that they can't keep from shareholders or something like that. But look, I think that what's important is that we get a Doctor Strange 2. I don't care how much they're paying him. I just want to see another great film. I love Doctor Strange. I love his portrayal of Strange. I thought he really came into his own after Infinity War, and I'm sure after Avengers 4, everybody's going to want another Doctor Strange movie. And I think with Guardians of the Galaxy probably being pushed, they'll move Doctor Strange into that slot. Maybe not as soon, but I think we're going to see one quickly.
Oh yeah, I think it's a no-brainer. We are getting a Doctor Strange 2. I mean, we've all known that. That's irrefutable. We're definitely getting one. It's just about when at this point. James, that was James. Next one. Exciter Matt Tronic writes, "Hello, could DC still use Vicky Vale, Alexander Knox, or Max Schreck in the new DC universe, or does Tim Burton own the rights to those characters?" Well, first of all, and we touched on this a little bit earlier, Vicky Vale was a comic book character, I believe, before the Batman movie, so that's not a thing. But I could be wrong about this, but if Warner Brothers paid for that movie, that Tim Burton creates a script, Warner Brothers owns that script now if they paid for it, right?
Absolutely. It's work for hire. Those characters are owned by Warner Brothers outright. When a director or writer is hired by the studio, you can always see in the end credits of the movie, for the purposes of copyright, the author of this motion picture is Warner Brothers. So movies are actually owned by their studios. It's not like a comic book where you have a creator-owned comic book. Like, Sandman was characters that Neil Gaiman would create. Some of those are creator-owned. It's different with movies. Movies, the studio owns them outright.
All right. You know what? We're out of time, but we still got like 20 questions left. So I'm just going to tell you right now, we're not going to get through all of them, but we will get through the next bunch as quick as we can, so we get to them as much as we can. John Walkden writes, good morning from Wales. Is anyone else thinking that the alternate universe that the Joaquin Phoenix Joker film appears might be shared with Shazam? No, it's not. In the Shazam trailer, we see references to Batman, we see references to Superman, so that's no.
Yeah.
So it's absolutely not. Murray Reich writes, all that for a drop of blood, Thanos. Great line. Great, like one of my favorites in the movie.
Oh, it's so good. I mean, everything, watching the movie again, I just keep throwing on the disc. It's just, I think somebody in my Twitter feed said it was one of the most rewatchable movies of all time. I don't disagree.
It's a very rewatchable movie.
I just click through to go to scenes. I watched Rocket and Thor over and over again. I think I've watched Spider-Man, say, the end when I love watching him get dusted, just because I love the performance of the character. It's heartbreaking every time. It's great.
All right, Jason Reese writes, who wins in a one-on-one fight, Batman or Spider-Man? The real answer is it depends on who's writing it. If a Marvel person's writing it, it's Spider-Man. But really, in the comic book world, I've said this before, I will say it again, anything short of Jesus, Batman wins the fight. If Batman beats Superman, Batman certainly beats Spider-Man. That's the way I see it at any rate, Robert.
Although Spider-Man's a mutant, he was bitten by a radioactive spider. He does have mutant powers. He is superhuman now. And Batman is not, but Batman can outthink Spider-Man. So I think probably Batman would win.
Okay, next one. The Mad Titan writes, did you see the concept art for the Fantastic Four team in Deadpool 2? I'm glad it didn't happen, but the new suits looked pretty cool. Release the Frank cut. Yeah, so for those of you who don't know what he's talking about, the Trank cut. For those of you who don't know what he's talking about, there was a report going around that one of the reasons that Tim Miller departed Deadpool 2 and didn't work on Deadpool 2 is because he wanted to bring in Fantastic Four or something like that. I have not looked into that, so I really don't know anything beyond that. Robert, have you heard anything?
No, but I saw what this guy's referring to. It did look cool. And this week the super duper whatever it's called, because it's
the super duper cut
of Deadpool 2 that's 15 minutes longer, that's getting great notices. I can't wait to see it. I have it at home and haven't watched it yet, but I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, Keith Martin just sends in a super chat to be supportive. Thank you. Anthony Cullen brings up something that I meant to bring up with you. Here it is. Anthony Cullen asks, so, were Cap and Widow a thing in Infinity War or not? Now, here's the interesting thing. You and I had a quick conversation, but I think before either of us saw the director's commentary, that a report had gone out that in the director's commentary, the Russo brothers confirmed that they were an item. So, okay, great. So I watched the director's commentary, and I backed it up a few times. It's like, that's not in there.
No.
So it wasn't in there. I know you had a previous theory that they were.
Yeah.
I kind of believe that they weren't, but I haven't seen anything definitive to back up either my position or yours. Have you seen anything else to back up either?
No, but when I first saw the film, when Falcon says, this is awkward.
Right.
Captain America and Black Widow have been underground for essentially 2 years since the end of Civil War. And when people are working that close together, stuff happens. They're adults. And this idea that, oh, well, what about Sharon? Cap's waiting for Sharon. Look, man, you know what? When people are fighting in close quarters and there's a lot of emotions happening, I mean, haven't you ever had a one-night stand? Sometimes it just happens. And Cap and Natasha have mutual respect. They admire one another. They work well together. It's only natural that they might have hooked up, and Falcon knows about it. And so, when Bruce Banner comes back, maybe they had a thing for a little while, but people grow, people change, adults have adult behavior. And to me, I like my comic book characters when they're engaging in adult behavior because it makes them seem more real to me. And it makes sense that Cap and that Steve and Natasha have a relationship of some kind. Why shouldn't they?
See, I interpret it when Falcon said that, this is awkward. To me, it was, okay, these two characters, talking about Bruce and Nat, they were developing their relationship, and he just up and disappeared. He just took off.
Yeah.
And now he's gone for years and comes back. To me, that's the awkwardness, right? I mean, look, I'm going to be paraphrasing here because I can't remember exactly. One of my absolute favorite lines of all time that really got me right here is out of Avengers Age of Ultron. And it's at that party scene. We might have talked about this before, I can't remember. But Nat is talking to Bruce.
Yeah.
And she says, all these guys, they're always looking to rush into the fight. But then there's this new guy who walks away from the fight because he knows he'll win. I'm getting goosebumps thinking
Yep.
about that. It was so perfect, and then the whole "hey big guy" part that only she can reach Bruce within the Hulk, and there's something so special about that. But I mean, you're right.
But he bailed.
But
like
then
they
he
didn't even
bailed.
know where he went. I mean, as far as think about it from her perspective, she's interested in this guy, and he just lights off in a Quinjet and never comes back.
Hence, this is awkward.
Right. Or they had this relationship, this unresolved thing, and then it just ended because he left. But I agree with you there, but I think it was doubly awkward because now they're in a relationship and Hulk doesn't know, or Banner doesn't know, and they're going to figure it out. It was just awkward all the way around.
Bottom line here is, I don't think there's been anything definitive to say
No.
that my position is right or Robert's position is right. So, who knows? It's still up in the air. Maybe they'll reveal that later. MW77 writes, Robert Meyer Burnett, what is your favorite Fantastic Four run?
I'm really partial to the Byrne run in the 80s because that's when I started to really read Fantastic Four. It's a phenomenal run. It has everything you want in it. Now, I haven't read I have omnibuses of the last, 10 years. What, Hinchman? It was a Hinchman's run that I have yet to get to. But I think that the Byrne run, it was so, it really was where I discovered the Fantastic Four, and I loved Byrne so much. That to me was the best, longest run of Fantastic Four that I read. I mean, it was a long run, and I think the Byrne run forgive me if I'm wrong, but like 83 to 87, probably not that late because he was doing Superman, so maybe 82 to 86. I don't know the exact dates, but that Byrne run when I was in high school was it for me.
All right. Marie Ciphering writes, do you think that the Grandmaster and the Collector are immortal in the MCU? I'm just wondering if you think Thanos killed the Collector before the snap. If they are immortal, can they be dusted? I don't think... Well, in Thor Ragnarok, Grandmaster kind of explains his old age. He goes, out there, I'm this age, but because time happens differently in here, so it doesn't sound like he's immortal. Again, they never definitively say in Infinity War if he killed the Collector. My assumption is... everybody's there's dead. He's got the stone now. My assumption is he killed him, but they never outright said that in the movie. My assumption is they did, but what do you think?
But there's supposed to be celestials. There's supposed to be these, I think they're supposed to be immortal cosmic beings. I mean, I'd have to delve into that further, but I don't know if he killed the Collector or not. It looks like he maybe threw him aside. I don't know if he killed him. But
remember, that was an illusion of him in the movie.
That's so you don't know.
Yeah, they never said it, yeah.
But I do think that the interesting thing is, it's life. Even if you're immortal, I still think you could get dusted. Like, could Thanos have dusted the Celestials? I don't know.
It's life.
Yeah, it is life.
Part of life,
I don't know. It's an interesting question, and it's a question that, I was kind of looking forward to James Gunn delving into the more cosmic elements of the Marvel Universe. Now that's not going to happen, but maybe somebody else will. It would be interesting because if they're going to do the Eternals, which they've talked about, and if they're going to do the Celestials, and we're going to see them, they're really going to have to come up with a cosmology, because the question now has been asked. What would happen? Who are these guys? I'm still waiting. I want the Grandmaster and the Collector to go on a road trip movie with Howard the Duck. It's going to be like Burns and like Hope and Crosby. Look that up, kids. Go see a Hope and Crosby road trip movie. But we talked about that on Heroes. I want to see that. There's fan art out there. Somebody tweeted me their great artwork. That'd be an awesome movie. Guillermo del
Benicio?
Jeff Goldblum and Benicio del Toro. Who wouldn't want to see the two of them going off on some cosmic adventure to save the universe when they're bickering brothers with Howard the Duck? I want to see that. That's what should happen. Let Leah Thompson direct that.
All right. Bruce Wayne writes, interesting point Bruce brings up that I did not consider before. Does Marvel have to beg Sony not to show Spidey in any Far From Home trailers? Will Sony be willing to do that? You know what? You bring up a great point that I completely forgot about. Spider-Man Far From Home is a Sony film and is being distributed by Sony, and Sony makes all the decisions about how to market that film. That is a bump that I had not considered. Would Sony be willing to say, because Sony's the primary distributor, would they be willing to not show Spider-Man in the trailers to their movie prior to that? I don't know. That's a very good question. How does that figure into all
I
this?
think that's a good question. I never thought about that, but you're
That's
right.
an excellent point.
I think they'll do whatever. I think they're going to do whatever Marvel wants them to do, frankly, because I think they want to keep that relationship copacetic.
I don't know. I think Sony holds all the cards in that relationship. I think
might.
they have all the leverage there. But I don't know. It's an interesting question. I've got a feeling that somewhere in the 500 pages of their agreement, there's probably something about how they'll manage marketing to make sure that the films don't hurt each other or something like that. But who knows? It's a great question, but who knows? All right. Let's see. A fan of Peanuts writes, I'm a white boy. My roommate is black. He believes Killmonger is a hero. I believe he's a villain. We've argued extensively over this. Thoughts? Help. Oh, there is no doubt. Killmonger is a villain.
Yeah.
When you are talking about, I want to dominate the world, I want to kill anybody that opposes us, and I want to kill all their children, make no mistake, you are the villain. You may start, but like most good villains, they see themselves as the hero. They may even have origins rooted in being truly wronged and thinking in their heads they want to see something righted, much like a Thanos. Thanos is the hero. Most villains are the heroes of their own story. But make no mistake, Killmonger's a villain. He's absolutely a villain. When you're just walking around and you're killing everybody for the sake of killing them, and you got tattoos all over your body of all the people I've killed, and I'm going to add more. Even if your motivations, like a lot of good villains, come from a place of you seeing yourself as a hero, make no mistake, he's still a villain. I don't know. Do you see that differently?
No, I completely agree with you. However, all of the talk of colonialism, let's be clear. The African American experience in the United States has been horrible for 400 years. There's never been equality. There's voting rights and Jim Crow laws went away. But the reason that the reason that certain NFL players are not standing or they're kneeling during the national anthem is because an inordinate amount of black Americans are imprisoned and they're being killed at large percentages compared to the rest of the population. And what Killmonger was sticking up for, what he was talking about, is the way his people have been treated for 400 years of colonialism here in this country. And he has a point. But like John just said, that's what a good villain has. A good villain has a righteous cause. But make no mistake, he was also a cold-blooded murderer who liked to kill. And that's why he's a villain.
And with that, guys, you know what? We are out of time. But here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take all the questions that were left off here, and Robert and I will start things off next week by addressing the rest of these questions that got sent in, because he sent them in, so they're going to get addressed. And I won't just address them by myself, because he sent them in for me and Robert. So we will get to these things, and we will pop those up another time. Or you know what else? Maybe you and I can just hop on Skype sometime this week, like for a half hour, and rifle through the, one way or another, these questions that are still left, they're going to get addressed, whether it's in a separate video or in us starting off next week there. All right, guys, that's going to do it for us here today on this installment of what is for now called The Weekly Hero. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. Robert Meyer Burnett, dude, where can people find you online?
You can find me on Twitter at BurnettRM. I interact with everybody. Instagram, RM Burnett. The Burnett Work, which is on YouTube. My show, Robservations, the show about something, launches Monday, September 3rd, and it requires a lot of production. I mean, I'm making the whole thing myself. I'm shooting it myself. I'm editing it myself. And doing a lot of things myself. So hopefully it's going to, I don't know when on the 3rd, but maybe it'll be 11:59 before it changes over the 4th, but it's going to come out. So subscribe to the Burnett Work on YouTube and look for Robservations.
All right, and a special thank you, of course, to fact checker Jonathan, who's here. Make sure everything looks and sounds right. Appreciate that and correcting us for all the things
he has a great,
wrong.
You can't see it, but he's got a great Stranger Things t-shirt on.
Oh, it is great. Actually, you know what? Let's get shirt. I love that shirt.
Yeah.
I love that shirt. All right, guys. And, of course, you can follow me on Twitter, simply at John Campea. That'll do it for us for now, guys. Thanks a lot for joining us. My name is John Campea, and until next time.